It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again, time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 329. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
Hello.
Ashgar.
Hi.
Grace.
Hello.
Kodra.
Hi.
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen.
Hello.
So tonight is our annual Games of the Year show, where we basically fill out like our top picks and then put them in a list and then talk about them. And these are things that used to go for like 4 hours worth of recording. We're going to try really hard not to do that. We're going to try and get it into a normal show, which means we may be moving through them pretty quickly. The first one, 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. And this is one we've not really talked about much on this show. Ammo, was this
mentioned last week?
Yep, this one's mine.
Okay, tell us about this game.
So it is more like a visual novel sort of thing with some combat. In fact, the combat is kind of an entirely separate thing, and you can play through that and do the story later, or do the story and then some of the combat. It's really set up so you can... There's no like linear path you can work on a specific character's story, because there are 13 different stories for each of the 13 different characters. And so you can start with like whatever character you like, and you will play through as much of their story as you can, and you'll end up having to probably play somebody else because you're going to get locked by certain other things. But it leads to a very kind of interesting narrative. Like, nobody is necessarily going to play through the game the same way. And the story, it borrows from a lot of different sci-fi stories and tropes and mixes them all together in this really crazy and beautiful package. Like, there's the tripods and stuff, like straight out of War of the Worlds and stuff. It's been a little while since I played some of it, but the way you kind of navigate through the story is interesting, because you're going to obviously kind of find out about things along the way that don't make sense, and then later on you're going to be like, oh, they're talking about that person and this thing. And there's also a lot of like skipping around in time. Like, a lot of the game takes place in 1984, but it also takes place in 1944 and way in the future. And a lot of it kind of centering around Sakura High School and stuff like that. And it's really kind of hard to describe the game, because it's just, the story is very wild sometimes, but the main characters are also pretty interesting and compelling, and the way they kind of weave in and out of each other's lives and stories at particular moments is very strange. Like, you can come across the scene of these characters, they know each other and they're chatting and getting along and stuff like that, and like hours later in the game you could play the part where they actually meet the first time and so on.
This is starting to sound like the German Netflix series Dark, where it's a bunch of timelines interwoven, and
yeah,
it isn't until the end of the season that you really understand what happened in that season.
Yeah, basically it's really kind of fun and interesting, because there are going to be a lot of like beats where like it doesn't really make any sense, but then later on it's just like things, click into place, and it's just like, oh my god. And it's like, yeah, there's like the time travel and all sorts of crazy fun sci-fi stuff, and there's a talking cat, and obviously time travel machines, and also giant mecha.
Totally.
Is this like a very anime art style, or what type of art style are we looking at with this?
Yeah, it's anime. It's
a Vanillaware game.
It's Vanillaware, yeah. So it's all like, the really gorgeous sprites with the gorgeous backgrounds, and it's,
It's some of the most gorgeous 2D art I've ever seen, but that's kind of just what Vanillaware does.
Yeah, like, and that means nothing to me. I have no clue what Vanillaware has ever done before.
Odin Sphere or Dragon's Crown?
Okay, I've played Dragon's Crown.
It's nowhere near over the top with some of the art style of Dragon's Crown.
Sure, yes.
Yeah, it's closer to Odin's.
The character design is a lot more down to earth.
Yes, exactly.
But it has just, I mean, really incredible animation. Like,
Yeah.
it's really incredible 2D animation.
It's very beautiful, and like just like scenes, like one of the first ones, if you start with like, you know, this one character, you're just in a classroom, but the way like you move through the light in the classroom and how it just like warms the room, it's absolutely beautiful, and like the color palettes that they use, it's just gorgeous. It's really amazing to see it and play through it.
Well, and all the background, like I haven't played very much of it, but like the background NPCs, just it lends life to them while also making it clear that they're NPCs.
Yeah. And like some of them, you can kind of listen to what they're talking about in the background. And like later that might kind of be important, but you can listen to however much or little as you want and kind of move on and take care of whatever objective you have to be working on at that particular moment in time. But there's so much personality in the various background characters too. I think one of the things that I was kind of frustrated with early on is there are some parts you can't get through unless you do the things the game wants you to in a very specific order. And there was one I really wasn't entirely sure what they wanted me to do, and you have to kind of repeat various dialogue choices and actions until you find the right one without necessarily a lot of... You just have to kind of guess and then do things in the right order. And I didn't really feel like it was very well described what I should be doing right then. But for the most part, most of the scenes haven't really been like that. But there were a couple that was just like, what do you want me to do here? And I've played through several waves of the combat, and it's not like the super greatest kind of strategy stuff, but I thought it was fun. I kind of like the map style and stuff like that. It's just you're in giant mechs, so you kind of would hope that you could see the giant mechs like punching stuff, but it's all just kind of on this overlaid map thing over the city, and that's really all that you get.
Definitely sounds interesting.
I am into giant mecha right now.
But I do highly recommend it just because the story is crazy, and I did enjoy the combat. The music is great. It's by Hitoshi Sakamoto and Bass Escape, so there's a lot of good tunes. It kind of covers a couple different genres, and it's always very fitting with the scenes. So it's a really beautiful, gorgeous, and kind of weird package.
Sounds really cool.
Yes, I certainly recommend it. It's one of those, since you can kind of play the little scenes or whatever, you can kind of just play in short bursts, or you can play longer depending on how much you get sucked into it, and you're like, oh, just one more story bit. Like I want to unlock this person's next one, and you can really kind of get sucked into that, or you can be like, okay, I'm just going to do this person's next chapter, and then I'm going to stop for now. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I haven't done a lot of just like straight up kind of visual novels like this, but it was really fun change of pace, and it was really fun just kind of going along with some of the crazy twists and turns and being surprised with some of the crazy plot reveals and stuff.
Cool. This next one is kind of an esoteric thing. Kodra, this is yours, but it is less a specific game and more a concept.
Oh,
so Cryptic Sudoku.
So specifically, I found this through the Cracking the Cryptic community and YouTube channel. And there was a video of theirs that went viral earlier this year, like right as the pandemic was starting, which was a Sudoku that had only 2 numbers given. But there was a bunch of additional rules. It was... numbers couldn't be a knight's move away from each other, as in chess. numbers couldn't be a king's move away, so they couldn't be diagonals, and you couldn't have consecutive numbers next to each other. And like all of those rules meant you were able to like work out all of this different logic to solve the puzzle. And that I did that and was like, I would not have expected me to be able to do this type of logic, and sort of got me really into it. And it was really fun. And yeah, I probably spent more time solving variant rule Sudokus from that community than I did almost any other gaming this year. I even took a hand at creating my own rule sets for Sudoku and creating my own puzzles. So I learned a little bit about that too.
And are you sharing these back with that community?
Yes.
Sweet. That's kind of cool.
It is. If you're into Sudoku and are willing to like try a little bit of a new thing, I recommend checking out Cracking the Cryptic and their Discord community.
Cool. Next thing is something that I have talked about very recently, but Cyberpunk 2077. Like I did a lengthy blog post basically outlining my games of the year, kind of to get my head in this space for this show. And Cyberpunk 2077 is probably my number one game of the year. It is, the further I have gotten into it, the more intricate it has gotten. And I am hoping over time they fix all the bugs so other people can experience it, because like it's a weird experience. Like it has some of the absolute worst representation I've seen, and it's also got some of the best representation I've seen. It's got some of the weirdest bugs and most empty feeling areas, but also some of the most intricate and like deep areas. But all told, like I enjoyed the hell out of this game, and I am curious to see where it goes from here. But given that we have recently talked about it at length, and you can go dig up one of those shows. Rolling into the next game is also a me pick, Death Stranding. It came out on PC this year, so technically, last year. Technically, it is a new release of the past year, but a lot of people played it on the PlayStation the year before. I had never played a Kojima game prior to Death Stranding, so I don't know how much of it is me getting accustomed to his style of games. I cannot stand stealth games, and you really, really, really can't play Metal Gear without stealth. So I went back and tried, thinking, oh, hey, I like Death Stranding. I'll go play Metal Gear. But no, that didn't work. So I think part of it is this is the sort of game that maybe only really hit me the way it did because of the year that we've just finished. I played this in, I want to say August or October, or maybe it was August, I think. And at that point, you know, the pandemic definitely felt like it was here to stay. And, you know, we've all had a very isolated year. And this game is about a world where everyone has basically been isolated from everyone else. This incident happened called the Death Stranding that made it super dangerous to live around other people. So the world at the beginning of the game is super fragmented, and everybody basically lives in their own little underground bunkers, and nobody talks to anybody else. And your character basically goes on the mission of reconnecting up the world. And like it hit me because of the experiences that I was going through this year of being isolated and like, you know, working from home for the first time, like really working from home for the first time. And just the experience of like being this person that's slowly going through all these arduous tasks to try and reunite humanity, was just something I needed to experience last year. It it gave me way more hope than a bleak game about, post-apocalyptic ghost things. Probably should, but yeah, I enjoyed it greatly.
I have to say, I really enjoyed reading your blog posts about it. And I know the joke was always nobody knows what this game is about. But you made it sound very interesting, and I'm a lot more curious to maybe try playing it someday than I would have been before, especially when it came out on the PlayStation.
Yeah. The world is amazing. The part that is kind of hard to get past is it has way more technical detail in carrying packages than any game ever should. Like balancing your load is a thing. There's this series of missions that you can get where this dude wants you to deliver a pizza, but the pizza has to be carried perfectly level. So you have to pack your pack in such a way as to allow it to sit flat, because if it slides around, the item identifies that it's had gravity applied to it, so the toppings slide off. There's way more detail in the way that this world fits together than there should be. So there's a lot of that to deal with. But the narrative story is amazing. If you can somehow get past being a FedEx driver carrying packages across the world, and the other aspect of this, and I don't know if it would be the same playing it now as opposed to playing it as it was first released, but there was this sense of community as the things that you put in the world also appear in other people's games. So there was this whole sense of community as people were building bridges and leaving ropes out in the world. Because if you leave it there, you basically can't use it again, but the next person that comes along can come use it. So people left ladders and ropes and built bridges and paved highways, and everybody worked on these giant community projects with people that you're never ever going to see. It's just a name of another Steam player. And I don't know what it'll feel like going and playing the game now, because I would guess that the entire world is going to be paved over at this point, but it wasn't at that point. So you could actually see day-to-day things changing, which was really interesting. Okay, Tam, I'm thinking this is a you pick. Half-Life Alyx.
Yeah. So, I talked about Half-Life Alyx on a previous show, and I mostly figured that my picks for this year had been cemented in. But one of my criteria for selecting games of the year is not necessarily just, is this game excellent, but does this game make me rethink something about video games? And it takes a lot to crest that bar, because it's not every year has a game where I'm just mind blown. I'm rethinking video games in some major way. But I mentioned on the previous show that I don't think that Half-Life Alyx does not by itself convince me that VR is great and everyone should get one and it's amazing. But it does make me think that it's worthwhile. And that if we had a bunch of games like Half-Life Alyx, I would be very sold on VR. And it is the first VR anything I've seen that makes me say that. Because so much of it is it's an experience that I could not replicate outside of VR. It's got a really, really cool, fun control scheme. Just the way you interact with the game baseline is really neat and couldn't be done in just a regular first person shooter.
Yeah, that's exciting.
It just wouldn't work. And that's the thing that I think VR needs. The Half-Life Alyx is the first game I've played where pushing a button, picking up a box, and reloading my weapon were all really interesting, like, interactions that I had without feeling weird and onerous.
Oh, you mean like pushing a button in the world?
Yeah, pushing a button in the world. Like, I need to push a button to make this door open. I need to turn this handle to make the door open. Like, all of those interactions are modeled in the game where I'm sitting there and, like, I make weird little tactical decisions, like, which hand do I use to open this door? Do I use my... in some cases, I'm using my left hand to open the door because the gun's in my right hand, and I know that there's something on the other side. Sometimes I'm turning a wheel, and I want to use my right hand because it's dark, and I want to use the flashlight on my left hand to look around while this is happening. And, like, I can't think of another game where I've ever even started to think of opening a door as an interesting tactical experience. And not just tactile, but tactile. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I just bash the door open, and sometimes I, like, gently push it open. And it's easy to do. It's not like, oh, I have to remember the specific button combination that lets me open doors quietly, so I never actually do this. I just hit the open door button all the time, and whoops, I guess somebody saw me. That I've seen some stealth games try to do. In this case, it's like, oh, I push the door open slowly and quietly by pushing the door open slowly and quietly. And it's led to some stuff where it's like, oh, I'm out of, my pistol is out of ammunition in the magazine. I'm going to pick up this box and throw it at somebody to buy me some time, which is something that you can do in Half-Life, but it's not something I ever did. Certainly not before the gravity gun. And so there's a lot of little details that make me think, like, oh, this is really, really neat. Like, this is an experience that I just couldn't get outside of VR. And it does make me rethink, like, I've been really harsh on VR for a long time. This puts a crack in that opinion. Plus, it's more of the Half-Life story. The Half-Life story is, like, one of the only post-apoc stories I like, or at least that I like baseline. And playing as Alyx is awesome. Like, Alyx as a character is great. Playing as Alyx is awesome. The dialogue is snappy. The audio is incredible. Headcrabs in VR are genuinely terrifying.
Video game.
The what?
It's also proof that Valve can still make a narrative video game.
It's true.
Yeah.
I really wish that they wouldn't have to wait until they have some new industry-defining technical ideas for them to make a video game.
But they can still do it. They still have it in them. And I would have bet against that until this year, until like a month ago.
So, next game, I believe, is a Grace pick. Ooblets.
Yes, it is a Grace game.
Yeah.
It came out over the summer, and it was exactly what I needed at the time. So, yeah, just adorable little creatures, weird, bizarre little creatures who follow you around and dance. You know, it's like, what if Stardew Valley with dance battles? And who doesn't want that? I poured many hours into it because it's just delightful escapism with adorable weird little creatures. And the music was just wonderful. I'm watching the weird little ooblets do their little dances while they're doing their dance battles. Was super entertaining. And the card battle mechanic of it was pretty fun, and it has been improving as they've been, adding to the game. It's still not fully released. It's still early access, so they're still developing, and I've been ducking back in over the course of the year every once in a while when they have a major update. It continues to get better and better. They've added at least one whole zone since it started, and it's hilarious spooky town that's been taken over by spooky teens. That the regular folks who live in the town are like, what the heck? We just want our town. Get these spooky teens out of here.
Why are there so many spooky teens here?
It's a spooky place, and they want to hang out in the spooky place and be spooky. It's just
maximum spookitude.
It's wonderful. I absolutely wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone who just needs to have a little whimsy in their life right now.
I played a bunch of it with my fiance, and then when she got her new computer, she loaded it up, and I have come in to her asleep, having it still open on more than one occasion.
It is definitely a lot like Stardew Valley in the, well, I'll just do one more day's worth of playtime. Just one more daily cycle. And one more day. Well, just one more day.
Yeah, because it never seems like there's ever enough time to do everything you want to in a single day.
No, you have to go and chat with all the people in town. You have to, actually tend to your farm or tend to the Ooblets who are tending to your farm, which is its own little delightful activity. You can let them wear little hats and monocles and things. They'll pick your vegetables for you. And if you build them a fancy enough house, they'll even plant more vegetables when they pick the old ones.
That's awesome. You have Ooblet gardeners.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a great game. I played quite a bit of it when it first came out, and I need to probably return to it and check out the progress.
That sounds super charming.
Yeah, it's just, like I said, it's some fun whimsy.
So the next game I am guessing is an Ash pick, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon DX.
Yeah, that's a me pick. Mystery Dungeon DX is a remake of the very first Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game way back in 2006 or whenever that was. And it has the fortune of having this was my, oh wow, the pandemic is happening game. Because it came out in March, and it was pretty much exactly what I needed.
I played quite a bit of the demo, but I didn't actually end up picking it up.
I have just upgraded my rescue house for the first time.
So now it looks like your character's face.
Now it looks like a Pikachu. It's adorable.
So it's basically like NetHack, but with Pokemons, right?
Yes.
Sort of, yes. The Mystery Dungeon games they're roguelikes in the sense that you move one tile at a time and things happen.
Mm-hmm.
They do not have permadeath, although if you get defeated in a dungeon, you usually lose half of your money and all of your items on you. You probably have more items in storage. And also in the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, you have a chance to be rescued by someone else. Like, if you get defeated, you can give someone else a password, and they can do the same dungeon, get to whatever floor you are on, rescue you, and give you a different password to recover without any loss.
That's a cool take on a Bones file.
You can also rescue yourself.
Yes. Starting with Super and also back in this game, you can take Pokemon that aren't on your current team and try to rescue yourself. Also in this one, you can also just put out an online SOS. So you're not terribly likely to lose a whole lot, even if you die.
I did have my first TPK today when I discovered what monster rooms are.
Oh no, it's a monster house. That means the room is about to spawn roughly a creature for every 3 tiles or so in the room.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
And I'm glad at least this one doesn't teleport you to the middle of the room when that occurs. Because some other creatures in the series do that.
Oh.
But yeah, this series has been on a fairly long hiatus. The last entry was Super I don't even remember when Super was. It was some time ago, and it's on the 3DS. So just getting back to this, where you can go and explore dungeons, build up your team, build up your Pokemon reserves. It's just I enjoyed it a lot. Unfortunately, this is, again, a remake of the first game, and the story in the first game is not the most engaging. That was one of the things that got better as they made more games.
So is this like the first mystery dungeon game?
It is not the first mystery dungeon game, because the first mystery dungeon game was based on Dragon Quest IV, starring the merchant in that game, Turenko.
Okay. But it's the first...
It's like the second mystery dungeon game, though.
But there are other Pokemon mystery dungeons?
Yes, there are. There was Red and Blue Rescue Team, and then there was Explorers, Gates to Infinity, and Super Mystery Dungeon.
Ah.
So would this be a good place to start if you haven't played any of the other ones?
It's a wonderful
Yes.
place to start.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never played any of these, and it is totally fine.
It's the first game storyline with all of the mechanical improvements that have come along through the years in the series.
Aha.
And the demo was really fun. I mean, if you just want to try it out.
It has one of those carryover progress demos, so feel free to give that a shot.
Yeah.
Okay, next thing. I also kind of think is probably like a larger topic than this specific game, but Ring Fit Adventure. Kodra, I think this is a you?
Yeah, this is a me. This was sort of my pandemic thing, is like I need to not sit in my house. Well, I need to not like completely let myself go. I need to keep active. I need to keep doing something so that I don't sit in my chair for 16 hours a day. And for me, like, exercise is always a fraught subject because I never really want to... Like, I don't like going to the gym. I need there to be, like, something engaging me. Like, I love games. Games engage me. And I heard about Ring Fit, and I was like, this could really work. And it turns out it did. It really got me to want to do exercises, various exercises, so that I could progress further in the game. And it's all of the various like video game motivations, but applied to a workout routine. This is probably the game I've played the second most this year, because I was on a pretty good roll where I was doing it 5 days a week. The holidays have sort of impacted my ability to keep up, but I really enjoyed playing it. I'm like on level World 16 right now and have seen myself get better at these types of exercises. And like when I go back and look at what I did and where I've come, I see actual progress, which is not something I can always say for exercise routines. I mean, the story's a little thin on the ground. You are chasing Drago, the dragon, from world to world, and you are partnered with his former buddy Ring, who is concerned that Drago has been consumed by a dark influence. And all they want to do is work out and lift.
He's become an evil gym bro.
I do think my ring con is starting to die, which is a little annoying. Like,
maybe someone will make an aftermarket, like, super
I think
version
that
of
has
it.
occurred.
that has occurred.
Okay.
But I've heard there's not a lot of good aftermarket versions of it.
Yeah, and at $70 a pop, it would get real annoying having to keep replacing them at that.
Mm-hmm.
So next thing up, I know a lot of us have played. I put it on my list, and I believe Ammo put it on her list. Animal Crossing New Horizon.
Yup.
Like, this is the first Animal Crossing game I've ever really played. And so there was that combined with the fact that, like, this was a game I was playing as I was getting adjusted to living in Pandemia.
Yeah, I like
and
it.
I named my island Pandemia.
It literally came out just at kind of like the right weird time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So-
as long as you actually had a Switch, like, it was perfect timing. for it to come out.
Yeah, so like I would log in every morning and I would hang out with my animal pals that made me feel less weird about like the current state of the world.
Yeah, plus it was a cute kind of positive thing. And like even if you had grumpy villagers, they were still fun and friendly. And it was just a nice kind of getaway on an island of all places. So it had that really kind of nice thing going for it. A real kind of getaway sort of thing. And just cheerful.
Well, so I haven't played it, but I know that it also provided some small amount of social interaction at a time when people really needed it. So my aunt, who is probably in her 80s, has been playing it since it came out with her children and grandchildren, and continues, they continue to play it together.
Yeah.
They can't be together, but they can go to each other's islands and hang out. And I think that's just wonderful.
Yeah, that's true. Like my friends and I were like, oh, I've got this on my island today.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, come over and buy some.
Yep. It was aided a lot by the fact that we had a pretty good Twitter community as well.
Yeah.
Like, because a lot of people would say, oh, hey, I have this item for sale today. Oh, I really want to come. And then when it's open, like all these other people show up. And then there was this whole culture of just like leaving random gifts at people's islands whenever like you got something from their island, and
leaving notes on the noteboard.
And then there were like people that would do like swap meets where they would create a fenced in area of their yard and just drop stuff and like open up and let people come over and rummage through the things that they don't need anymore. It was just charming, and it was sweet, and it was innocent in a time when we really needed that.
Yeah.
And still provided a sense of connection.
I mean, I have not played in a really, really, really long time. And I think like part of it is like I didn't want my villagers to be mad at me, so I just stopped logging in.
Yeah, it does suffer a bit from the you need to log in every day.
That's what sort of stopped me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I'm kind of playing.
I mean, Mr. Rossetti is gone, so they no longer actually yell at you for this thing.
And I don't think the whole weeds thing is as much of an issue as it was. So.
No, and your villagers won't just pack up and move out if you haven't been around.
Because, man, in the original, if you were gone for a couple of weeks, like, you would come back to a ghost town full of weeds, and it was just depressing.
Yeah, like, if I started playing again, I would absolutely cheat it with the time skips. It's like... That was one of the things that was hard for me to get used to, was the fact that...
How do you pass a day in Animal Crossing? It turns out you've had to wait a day.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is a game where, like, you are constrained by real-time rules. And, like, for the first several days, that's not really fun. Like, there's not a whole hell of a lot you can do on those first few days.
And then quickly
there becomes way too much to do in any amount of hours.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of people, what they like to do is just like totally restart their island and just kind of like experience the early stuff again and like do things a different way. Like that was kind of a big deal for some folks too.
Yeah, I suppose in theory, if I wanted to, I could set my Switch back to launch day and go through and redo events and things even, because they're all just date locked.
Yeah,
assuming the event has happened at this point and has actually, been patched in.
Yeah.
Great game though. Next up is a game that I think several of us have played, but I do not remember off the top of my head who picked it. Crusader Kings 3.
I think Tam and I both picked it.
It was definitely
I gave credit if you also put it in your honorable mentions.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't know how many hours I spent on Crusader Kings 2, and Crusader Kings 3 does everything Crusader Kings 2 did, and does it better, and does more. Like, a lot of the stuff that was added to the second one by add-ons is just built in from the beginning, and it's just a fun, like, story creation game that is technically also a like conquer the world game.
With a hilarious way of mitigating managing difficulty. Because some people are definitely easier to conquer the world with than others.
It's true. Also, if you decide to, play multiplayer, you can all work together, and the AI just can't handle it.
It
can a little bit.
It can a little bit.
Just overpower you.
The game. So mostly, I feel like multiplayer lets you do things at a little bit faster time scale.
Mostly it allows you to like have one player playing, say, an emperor, and the other players playing kings under that emperor, and not have to worry about keeping their liege happy like they normally would.
Yeah, I guess that's
which is helpful.
Yeah, I have managed to found an empire in that game, not on normal difficulty though, on easy difficulty. But no, that game's really fun and really interesting and makes me want to play, like... the thing is, I still feel like it's a 4X game. I still feel like I understand fundamentally how to make the numbers go up. But
the death mechanic is what throws it for the loop. Like, that's what changed it for me.
Yeah, but that's just a new resource for me to manage.
But, like... My life was going grand until I died. And then I realized just how haphazard my connections were.
Yeah.
Because like my kingdom broke apart.
It's one of those things that like I don't think I would classify it as a 4X game, because it's really not. It's only got a few things of that, but it sure looks like one.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of play it as one up until like something goes sideways for you, and it definitely goes sideways.
Well, I think that's what's interesting is like a lot of the things going on in this game are still manageable. Like everything is something you can try and influence against.
Mm-hmm.
Like the game, it does not frequently feel hyper random. And the things, like, everything happens for a reason. And it's just what trade-offs are you willing to make to get yourself ahead.
One of the things I honestly love about that they added in this one that Crusader Kings 2 didn't have was the stress mechanic.
Yeah.
Because instead of just completely limiting your choices based on your character's stats and their personality traits, you still have options that go against your personality traits. It just stresses you out to use them. So at that point, you have a choice of like, okay, do I really, really need to do this? Because I'm going to get real stressed out and, probably have a mental break. And that is in itself bad, but it might be worth the cost, the price.
Yeah, that's another thing that bit me was like my original ruler was real murder hungry, and then his son was a pacifist. So all the tricks that I used to do to keep everything going together didn't work anymore because he got stressed out.
Yep.
My favorite story is everything was going great, and then my character died, and I had not paid too close attention to who was next in line, and it was my 6-year-old son. And as soon as but all of my armies were still mustered. I was at war when I died. So all of my armies stayed raised, and then all of my vassals broke off from me, and I had to take the army around and jail every single one of my uncles and aunts with this massive army, and then this was the boy who became emperor.
I was going to say, that sounds to me like that worked out really well for you.
Oh, it worked out great.
I know I said this when we first talked about it, but basically this game is every so often somebody walks into the room, slams their hand down onto the table, knocking the pieces everywhere, and then you just play like nothing happened.
Yeah.
Wherever things landed, that's what we're doing now.
But 4X games get so stale. Like that's the thing is like I understand where you're like, well, this really isn't a 4X game, but I love 4X games, and my frustration with them is they get stale, and this is a 4X game that does not get stale. And I love playing it like that. Like, I always want to be trying to get bigger, and something is going to be interesting and throw me for a loop.
Well, so part of the reason that I don't think of it as a 4X game is because it is entirely reasonable and perfectly functional to not be always trying to get bigger. You don't need to become an empire, and it works fine. And I think that's really, really, really neat. Like, you can play a game where you're not trying to just become the biggest and baddest, and in fact, like, that works out, and it's got its own series of challenges, which is something that a lot of 4X games I find don't do very well, where I feel like I just have to be bigger forever. Whereas this one's like, I played as little tiny Luxembourg for a long time, and it was super compelling. And I thought that was really, really neat, because it's not just that it like changes things up and doesn't get stale, but also it stays interesting from a, like, there's a lot of different ways to play it that all feel valid and supported, versus just get big, win hard, which I think is really cool.
And you can also see, like, oh, so this is how these tiny empires survived, by basically being really good at the political game.
Yeah.
Like,
it definitely led me to read a bunch of history.
Yeah, because like if you were just creating heirs to send off to make alliances with stronger people, then like that's a game. Like, that's a specific game style.
Yeah, it was fascinating. One of my favorite games of it I've played was one in which I was playing as, like I said, Luxembourg. And Luxembourg is this like kind of tiny little kingdom in the middle of the Holy Roman Empire. And you wouldn't think that would be interesting, but you get, as Luxembourg, you get a ton of the benefits of being in a huge empire without many of the costs. And so I could let the Holy Roman Emperor deal with the absolute hot disaster that is the Holy Roman Empire that I never actually want to play myself, because dear Lord, is it a mess. But I get to reap most of the benefits of being part of it, which is cool. And I can like bide my time.
Yeah, and you can still do things to like grow your dynasty without having to, take direct control of places, which is, technically that's like the main established ultimate goal of the game, is to make your dynasty as large as possible. And so you could do things like, try and manipulate the votes to get someone from your dynasty elected emperor. Still somebody else having to deal with all that crap, but
Yeah. And then on the other side of things, there was the game that Coder and I were playing, where we were just like the enormous Middle Eastern empire.
Oh, that was really fun. Yeah.
Which was like the opposite. And it was like this cool multiplayer thing where we were huge, just immense. But like, because it was two of us managing stuff, it worked.
Well, it also meant that we routinely had an interesting challenge in the forms of crusades.
Also that.
That's right. That was the game in which I am in Jerusalem fighting off the Crusaders, and you capture the Pope.
Yes. Yeah.
That's always good.
We were able to the other one we played was a 4-person game where we were all different parts of the crazy, like, Irish, British, Isles madness.
No, we were all the Danes.
We were the dad and the 3 brothers. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Our uncle.
Yeah, you guys were over in, 2 of us were over in, actual Scandinavia, and 2 were over in England because they had They were founding the Danelaw.
Yeah. Well, and it was really, really neat because there was this back and forth of, you know, the four of us were all broadly allied, but we're also filling distinctly different roles. Like, it was really neat. In my case, I was Mr. Diplomacy, and I was basically making sure that the ridiculously warmongering, like all of my ridiculously warmongering and power consolidating brothers could get away with not having to do that because I was keeping the big powers of Europe appeased.
Yep.
And it was like, that was really, really neat. Like, was I huge? No, but I didn't need to be because I had all of this other stuff going on.
And when somebody declared war, I came and smashed them.
Yeah, it's really, really neat seeing how it can all click.
Okay. Next one is a game that a decade ago I wouldn't have thought was possible, but Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Oh boy.
This game was so good.
Like, so this was one of mine. This was my top one by a huge margin.
Same.
I love Final Fantasy VII. It's in my opinion the best Final Fantasy game, full stop. And it managed to do that. Like, I understand people saying that it is overrated. I think it is correctly rated. because it marks the point. The original Final Fantasy VII marks the point where Final Fantasy went from a mechanics heavy game to a narrative heavy game, while still without sacrificing mechanics, which is pretty rare.
I was going to say, the series prior to that went back and forth between mechanics heavy and narrative heavy game.
It sort of did, but I don't feel like any of the stories other than Final Fantasy VI were all that impressive.
4 was impressive for when it came out.
I was going to say.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair. I think Final Fantasy VII was impressive compared to other games that weren't Final Fantasy games when they came out.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there were other Final Fantasy games were doing neat stuff, but I always felt like they were a little bit behind. Like when I played FF6, I had played a bunch of other games with great stories.
Wait, hadn't you played Chrono Trigger by then?
Yeah, I'd played Chrono Trigger by then. And so I was like, this is good, but it's not like mind-blowing the way Chrono Trigger was. Whereas FF7 was like head and shoulders incredible. But the remake had no right being good. Like, there's no reason the game should have been good. It should have been a disaster. It's hard to imagine it not being a disaster.
I think they made some. I think they had a vision and went with the vision.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing that I haven't seen in remakes that I feel like makes the FF7 remake work. Is it was very clear and very good at knowing what to keep, what to change, and was not shy about making those changes as it needed to.
Like, it's actually a remake and not just a rehash.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a remake, not a remaster. And I think that's a really important distinction.
At some point, I really need to make myself watch a playthrough of this game because I was super excited about it. Like, really wanted to play it. Loved Final Fantasy VII. But just the combat style and mechanics did not work for me.
Even on turn-based mode? Even on turn-based mode?
Even on turn-based mode. It was okay, but I just don't know. I think some of it was just the time. It was just not the game for me at the time. But I really want to engage with the story and see where it's going and what they did with it. Obviously, I've heard lots of spoilers, but I need to be able to experience it separate from the actual gameplay.
They can see that.
Because I still am interested in what they were doing narratively, even though the actual game mechanically was just not what I was into at the time.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that just blows my mind about the story is, I mean, I don't think it's spoilers to say that it's different. But wow, am I excited about the next one. I'm more excited about the next one than I thought possible. Because they are doing interesting stuff with it. And like it's totally worth looking into and playing, I think, because when you see it, it's like, wait a second. Like I feel like at this point it's very minor spoilers to say that the end of the first game puts it in no uncertain terms that the other games cannot be like the rest of FF7. It is a pretty faithful. It pretty faithfully follows the story of FF7 to a point, and then it becomes clear that there's no going back. And I'm so here for that. Plus, it's beautiful. It's got modernized writing. It surprised me and made me have feelings even when I knew something was going to happen. Like even knowing how it was going to play out, it still managed to get me, which is like, how often does that happen? I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, it's on the list of things that I need to revisit because like I got to a certain point and then for whatever reason stopped and I need to pick it back up. And then like it was one of the games that I was kind of waiting to get a PS5 so that it would be prettier when I played it.
I mean, I can possibly tell you what one of the reasons is. It might be later on down this list.
Oh, okay.
I was like, this was a game that felt like it had very strong direction. And then when I looked up the director and it's Tetsuya Nomura, I'm like, that makes sense.
Yep.
This is somebody who has been doing this job for a very long time at this point and is very confident. And yeah, like this game was a game that felt like it had very strong talent high up the like chain of command, because it felt like everyone was working off of the same script. I do want to say I loved the combat. This was the best version of the Final Fantasy 15 combat I did not like Final Fantasy 15. Like I thought the combat was just a little bit not quite there and wasn't actually fun for me. This was incredibly fun to play.
Yes, that's also fair. I felt like they did a really, really, really good job of refining the FF15 model into something that felt like, I don't know, I've always felt like Final Fantasy games wanted to be real time but couldn't technologically pull it off. And I feel like FF7 is them like finally realizing what they were trying to do with things like ATB and so on. And I realized that it's not from a mechanic standpoint, like they've established a completely different thing. And that's what they are beloved for. And I'm glad that they put in like turn-based mode, and I would love to see that taken further. But also at the same time, I feel like I know what FF7 lets me see like what a vision realized, which is cool to see. And I like seeing like what did this game want to be originally.
So next game, Ghost of Tsushima. I think this was in my honorable mentions. I'm not like Tam. I'm pretty sure you had it on your list.
Yeah, it is on my list.
This is a great game.
It's great. Yeah,
it's a game style that I really enjoy. It is the open world ARPG, but the way that it is done with this game, like it's not super different, but at the same time, there's a level of design and artistry to the way that it is put together that makes it feel like a unique set piece. Like, sure, it kind of plays like Witcher or the modern Assassin's Creed games, but like what it's doing is it feels different, especially with the way that the samurai play works. And I've not spent hardly any time being a ghost, but like the samurai thing is great. Like I love walking up to a camp and challenging them to a fight and having them send out their strongest person and now whittle through like 3 of their strongest people before I even start the fight. and then just take them on as they come.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've always felt about stealth games is good stealth games make stealth an interesting option, but don't require you to do it all the time. And I feel like this does an incredibly good job of making it interesting to do both. Like I go back and forth between the two. And the challenge mechanic is the thing that stealth games often do is make you want to use stealth as an opener to kind of whittle down your opponents and then get into a big fight. And this does the challenge mechanic does an incredibly good job of realizing that concept without you having to be stealthy, which is really neat.
Well, and mechanically, like, it supports stealth extremely well. Like, it has a lot of really cool things going on. So, like, you don't have to stealth around on the ground. You can take to the building tops and, like, stealth along the top of it, kind of like you could in Tenchu. Or you can, like, crawl under the huts and hide there and wait for your time to go out and take somebody out. Yeah.
And the stealth is good. Like, I play it heavily stealthy, and it's good. It works well. It feels good. It's paced well, which is not always true. And I don't know. It made my list. It made my list because it's also just so beautiful. Like, not just in. It does an incredibly good job of pacing in a way that I've never seen an open world game do. Because open world is like, it's so hard to pace, but it does this incredibly good job of pacing where a lot of the little like things you might go and do are relaxing and different. Like they're varied and they're different and they're interesting and they're it's like they're meditative periodically or just beautiful. You know, you have an entire like, you know, the equivalent of a tower in Assassin's Creed or like a feather or whatever. That's just go appreciate beauty. Find a beautiful place and appreciate it.
Well, and one of the things that I really like about it is it kind of reminds me of Witcher 3 in that like it doesn't have any true fetch quests. Everything you are doing is for some character that is actually interesting.
Yeah.
Like the NPCs have stories. They have reasons why they need your help. And like you can sign up to like do a thing and it can go in a completely different direction than you thought it was going to go. Also, you can pet the foxes.
It's true. It's
always a plus.
A vital piece. I also really enjoy I've been playing it since it came out and I haven't beaten it. It's the first open world game that I'm probably going to platinum, which is completely madness for an open world game in my opinion mostly. But also, like, it's just been that interesting, and I don't feel the need to binge it. I'm just kind of playing it at my own pace.
Well, there's a lot of game here, and it does feel better to me, like if I play it a little bit at a time.
Yeah,
like I'm gonna pop in, I'm gonna knock out a few objectives, and I'll go play something else for a while. Like,
yeah, I play a little bit, I come back to it. I play a little bit again, I come back to it, and that's fine.
Like there's 3 acts to the game, and I think I am in the wind up of the first act.
Yeah, I'm in the second act. But I'm not in a hurry, and that feels great. I know I'm gonna come back to it. It was beautiful on the PS4 Pro. It was beautiful on the PS4. It's beautiful on the PS4 Pro. It's beautiful. It's ridiculously beautiful on the PS5. I'm just going to keep enjoying it. And eventually I'll get to the end and it'll be great, but I'm not in a hurry to do that. I don't feel like if I don't, I'll just forget about it the way I do with a lot of games.
I think part of what makes it work is like a lot of times there's an artificial sense of pressure that the game puts on you that like something as bad is going to happen if you don't hurry up and get through the narrative.
Yeah.
Whereas this game has like a very languid pace. Like, yeah, your island's been taken over, and you know, however long it takes you to get that back is fine. like you're now living with the occupation.
Yeah. I mean, it's you fighting. It's not like, oh, there's a war on, and if you don't do anything, you're going to lose the war. Like, you lost the war. You're just doing something about it now, and maybe that works, and maybe it doesn't.
Okay, now I get what Ash was referring to. This next game, Phantasy Star Online 2. It's what kept me away from Final Fantasy, didn't it?
Uh-huh.
Yep.
I have been waiting for this game for basically 8 years.
Well, and we both did the nonsense of playing it on the Japanese servers, didn't we?
We did. And I don't know, it's an enjoyable action RPG MMO-like thing. It is great to play it in English. I admit that their future plans for the game confuse me greatly.
Seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still not clear on what it even means.
Honestly, I don't know either. But what they did in 2020 for this game was I liked it a lot. It was great to actually understand what was going on a little bit. Although a little bit, because this game's story is freaking nuts.
It's a true fact.
But for the few months we played it, it was extremely enjoyable. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like I totally expect to return to at some point and play it some more.
I really want to return to the new thing they're doing.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the new thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
I will say the announcement of the new thing kind of killed the current thing for me.
It's fair.
Yeah.
I feel
that's kind of where I am too.
I feel like I really enjoyed the potential of it, but it didn't quite grab me in the way that I wanted it to, or the way that it grabbed other people. But I think that the new thing might, because it feels like it's going to be more. I feel like it might address some of the things that I didn't like about it.
Okay, so realistically, like recently, I went back and played a lot of Fallout New Vegas, and it's a 10-year-old game, and playing Phantasy Star Online 2 kind of felt like I was playing a 10-year-old game. I mean, I want to see what they can do with that whole thing in the new version.
I think that's why they're not really remaking it, but doing whatever they're doing is because they want to have a modern version of this game.
Yeah.
And I want to play a modern version of this game, so those seem to align pretty well.
I do find it amusing how impossible it is to find information about this game because it's all based on people playing on Japanese servers, which are several patches ahead of us.
They're not ahead anymore.
Oh, so there are new classes we can unlock?
Yes.
Nifty.
Huh.
I think all the classes are in now.
All the classes are in.
Yeah, so there should now be parity between the info. Like, the problem is the names of things still won't join up because the fan translation of abilities and the official translation of abilities are different.
Sure, but
still have to do some translation there, but like the meat of it should be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next up, Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Yay!
Who? I have 2 picks for this. Who was it?
This was me and Ash.
I think I had it as an honorable mention.
Yeah, I had it as one of my 3. Like it's the newest Yakuza game, but instead of being a beat 'em up, it's an RPG with like the job system, and it's so much fun. It's like
this game's wild.
It's super wild. Like the main story, as per usual, is a fairly serious story full of betrayal and like fighting between different criminal syndicates. With it looks like the ultimate boss being a populist politician who has been making use of a public plan to clean up the gray areas of Japan to gain power. So it's maybe just a little topical there. But then also I'm running a business, and currently my board of directors consists of 2 Japanese businessmen, a giant Roomba, and a chicken.
Chicken is so good, though.
Giant Roomba?
The giant Roomba is the most charismatic employee I have.
I love Yakuza games for their pure, unfiltered nonsense residing immediately next to entirely chill, like entirely serious crime story.
Yeah, gritty crime drama.
Yeah, it's like
plus slapstick comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like I mentioned, it has the job system. So you've got various jobs that are like real world jobs. So things like chef, host, fortune teller, homeless guy, and these all map pretty well to standard RPG jobs. Like some of them are like physical DPS jobs, some of them are more support, some of them are a little tankier, and some of them are magic users. Except that like this takes place in the real world. So like homeless guy is basically black mage, and it involves doing things like breathing your stanky breath all over someone, or filling your mouth full of booze and spewing fire at them, or summoning pigeons at them. I think my favorite is I unlocked Fortune Teller recently, and so your weapon is a crystal ball, and all of the attacks that I've unlocked so far involve hucking the ball at people.
Oh my god, that sounds amazing.
It's wonderful.
I finally unlocked
so Fortune
it, but I didn't
Teller
have
is a
any weapons
physical
for it, so I haven't done easy
DPS.
yet.
I mean, it's technically a magic class, but it's just that the attacks involve hucking the crystal ball at people. Like the very first attack, you're basically kicking at them like a soccer ball. The next one that you unlock, you bowl it at them. In fact, one of the weapons that you can get for the Fortune Teller is a 20-pound bowling ball. That's the weapon I'm using right now. There's also a couple of jobs that are in DLC that you have to pay $5 total to unlock, which I think is worth it. Devil Rocker for the men in the party, and Matriarch for the women.
Their interpretation of Matriarch, man.
Matriarch is like the one job in the game. No, is one of two jobs in the game that gets to use an actual weapon as its weapon. The bodyguard gets to use a katana. Matriarch gets to use a naginata.
Well,
oh my!
It's pretty badass. Devil Rocker, you basically look like a member of Kiss. And you get abilities like Vampire, where you bite somebody on the throat and drain health from them.
Seems perfectly normal.
But yeah, and all of this is taking place in modern day Yokohama primarily. Eventually you get to go to some other places in Japan, but the majority of the game takes place in a kind of downtrodden area of Yokohama. And it's very much a game about, the main story is very much a story about protecting the people that you care about and protecting a downtrodden area from the outsiders who want to come in and take it over. Because the premise going into this is that, like with the original Yakuza, you went to jail for many years for a murder you didn't commit. And when you get out, things have changed quite a bit. And among other things, the Omi Alliance, who are one of the antagonistic factions in the previous games, have taken over pretty much all of Japan. And this bit of Yokohama is one of the few places they don't control, because the three competing mafias there have kind of a pact where they are kind of all in balance and protecting it. And you end up there via certain events, which is good because the Omi Alliance do not like you. But this is one of the places that they can't come find you. And you get dragged into all sorts of stuff. All because you tried to get a job. Like I'm very far into the game, and the main character Ichiban's like driving goal is still deal with the fact that some dudes murdered my boss. Like that's what's led him into all of this. Like there are other elements too that are attached to it. Like there are some people that he knew back before he went to jail that are involved in all of this, because of course they are. But yeah, it's a new character who is just as likable as Kiryu, but much more emotional than Kiryu.
I mean, that's not hard.
Yeah, like
it is admittedly quite funny. Like Kiryu, part of what made Kiryu great is that he was the straight man.
Yeah.
To a completely ludicrous everything.
Yeah, and Ichiban is still
in that
the straight
role.
man. But also, he's got goofy hair that everybody makes fun of.
He's got a lot of things that everybody makes fun of. He gets like no respect from anyone ever.
Yeah. Because he wanted to, he got out of jail and he went to a barber and asked for a hairstyle that was really popular with Yakuza back in the 90s. So it was out of date when he went to jail, and they don't know how to do it anymore. So what he ended up with is kind of the shaggy mess. Oh, also there are Final Fantasy style summons.
Like, what do you mean by Final Fantasy style summons?
Like as in there is a summons menu, and you unlock them through various side quests, and you summon them in, and there's a cutscene, and they do their thing, and it like does AoE damage, and often leaves an effect on all of the enemies that you're fighting. But there are things like, like some of the more reasonable ones are like a sumo wrestler, or the leader of a biker gang. That one does fire damage.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also have like a Korean movie star who shows like a little preview of his next movie, and it gives everybody chills. Or a rain of or a rain of crawfish.
What?
That's one of my favorite ones.
It's so great.
It's also so cheap.
Is the best. Yes, it's only 1,000. It's only 1,000 yen per summon, because you do have to spend some cash to summon these. Which early on, like even at the point I'm at, money is much more of an issue than it was in previous Yakuza games. Like mostly because there's so many things to spend money on, and they're all important. Like new weapons, like others. I think the crawfish is still my favorite summons. There's also a cat who deals damage.
I do have the cat now.
Who deals damage to everyone, and then can leave enemies charmed because he's just so cute. But yeah, it's a wonderful game. It is continuing along, the same continuity as the previous ones. Like all of them happened. There are occasional references to things like I have actually ran into somebody that mentioned Kiryu and specifically mentioned him and said, no, I'm not his friend. He probably never wants to see me again.
Oops.
And also another character from a couple of characters from previous Yakuza games, both of which my immediate reaction was, wait a minute, you're supposed to be dead. One of them it still hasn't been explained how he survived, but like I buy it. He's a badass. And the other, it turns out like that that person is dead. This guy's his body double. And it's a whole thing. So you don't need to know anything about any of the previous games to play this one, but like there are little things like that if you did. Or like there's a cutscene where they're talking about how when the Omi Alliance took over Kamurocho, the Tojo leaders left, and if you have played previous games, you recognize who those Tojo leaders are. Like Majima is there wearing his extremely loud jacket. But if you don't, you know that these are the guys who used to be in charge in Kamurocho, and they got out. Yeah. So this is a good one to start with if you've never played before, or if you tried one and weren't into the combat. Well, if you like RPGs better, here you go. It's just a lot of fun. Also, this is the first one to have an English, like actual English voice track. If you weren't into only having Japanese voices as an option,
which is quite good.
I know George Takei is one of the voice actors. I'm not sure who he's playing, but if I have a guess, I suppose I could look it up. But yeah, I've heard nothing bad about it.
Awesome. Okay,
I need to play it. I started it, but
it's so good.
Next up, Genshin Impact, a game that I did not see coming until it was suddenly a phenomenon.
I'm pretty sure nobody saw this coming.
Yeah,
like it's another mobile game among just so many garbage mobile games. Why would it be anything special?
I remember seeing a thing for it like a while back and thought, it's not that, like, whatever, cool, that's fine, but not a big deal. And then forgot about it. Yeah,
like trailers looked like something that might actually be good, but trailers for mobile games always lie. So
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But like it's really good and has a PC game.
Like
the PC game is really good too.
It's like Breath of the Wild, but with actual NPCs and lots of player characters.
Ash and I were having this discussion before the show that like Breath of the Wild is like, it does a bunch of interesting things, but now I'm happy that other games have come along and have done those things better. Because like Genshin and Immortals Phoenix Rising are both games that are like definitely taking serious notes from Breath of the Wild, but like I feel like they're delivering more of what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, I mean, it has to be said, like, this game has some whales.
Yeah.
There are people that, like, there's one YouTuber that I don't know how much he's spent, but it is somewhere between 15,000 and like 25,000 on this game.
Holy crap.
Trying to 6 Constellation all the characters.
Yeah.
What?
And the thing is, you absolutely don't have to do this to viably play this game.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Like you could spend no money on this game and play it perfectly viably. Like there's a battle pass that you can spend some cash on. There's a subscription thing you can spend some cash on to get some gems every day, and that's the only thing I ever spent any money on.
Well, and that daily gem thing is like an extreme value based on the total number of gems you get from it over the course of a month.
Yeah.
I mean, like most gacha games, really.
Yes. But even without that, like, you can get new characters at a reasonable clip, and, like, no characters are just useless. Like, some are clearly better than others, but they're all viable.
Something, Barbara.
Okay, Barbara's pretty bad.
No, Barbara's amazing.
Amber.
It's
Amber.
All right, sorry, Amber.
Barbara's
Barbara's
good.
great.
Go, Barbara, go.
Sorry.
Yeah, Barbara's great. Amber's pretty bad.
Amber's,
She's also she's the first one they give you. The first one they give you is always bad.
Amber's a confused character. Like, she doesn't have a kit that works.
Yeah.
Like, if they ever fix that fact, she'd probably be fine. But like, when you have Fischl, like, why would you ever use Amber?
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing is, like, pretty much you can get a pull a day, pretty much.
Yeah.
And eventually you will pity your way into 4 and 5 stars.
Yeah, one of the things I really appreciate that I've not seen any gacha game. I've played a few gacha games and none of them did this, and I always hated that they didn't. Is the pity lasts between banners. Like every other gacha game I've played prior to this one, that if there was a pity system in there, it was only within one particular banner, and if you didn't hit that point before the banner went away, then you were just out of luck. This one, it's when a banner gets replaced by a new banner, your pity rolls over into that one. So once you've done 90 pulls, you are getting a 5-star. Just, it doesn't matter how many banners it was across. That's great.
It may be a weapon that you have no interest in, but you're going to get a 5-star.
At least on the character banner, you're not going to get weapons. But on the permanent banner, you're probably going to get a weapon.
Yeah.
I have absolutely gotten a 5-star weapon off the character banner. That is not true.
Oh.
Yeah, if you get it on your off pull, because it alternates between guaranteeing something from the banner and giving you something that's completely random.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're on the rotating banners, every second pity pull is always going to be the title character from that banner.
Yep.
I have yet to get any 5-star weapons, and I'm perfectly okay with that fact.
4 stars, perfectly fine.
Yep.
5-star weapons are just too costly to like invest in because you're never going to refine them. Refining them is the act of taking a duplicate weapon and pumping up the weapon with your duplicate.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have refined several 4-star weapons at this point, but I'm never going to refine a 5-star weapon.
And that's how you improve the special ability of the weapon. Like either increase the percentage chance of it happening or the numbers on it or what have you.
But I love the exploration of this game. I mean, the characters are fun. They all feel fairly different, even when they're the same style of character, using the same weapon. And I appreciate that a lot. But really, the world is beautiful, and I like all of the puzzles. I appreciate that they have now added an entire extra zone that has its own zone mechanics and other things going on, and they're trying new and more complicated or interesting things with the puzzles. And I'm super looking forward to more of that.
Yeah.
Well, and when we last talked about this, I think I mostly talked about, how hard the resin cap was. And since then, they have put in so much content that, like, I will never get everything done and run out of content in a single day.
But they've definitely been more generous with the way that you can deal with your resin. Mm-hmm. It feels like you have much more control over how you spend that now, whether you spend it immediately or sort of stash it away. And I really appreciated that the last event that just finished did not require any resin to do the event activities.
Oh, that was great.
About time.
That made a world of difference. It made it so much more fun.
That was one of their main complaints for that first event, was that it required resin. Like, the first event would have been fine if it didn't require resin. Well, it's like the rewards weren't good enough to, like, really spend resin on.
Mm-hmm. The rewards from the first event were worth it if you needed the level up materials, because it was still a better ratio of resin to books than if you had gone out and done the normal activity that would give you them. So it was worth it if you needed that reward, but since that was the only reward.
But only very slightly, and it was a lot more work than going out and doing a ley line.
Yes, yeah, exactly. The new event that just ended had a lot of different activities to do, and you could do them fairly reasonably solo, which was not really the case with the previous one, or you could do them in a group and get it done faster. So it felt worlds better. And
it gives me hope that they continue to improve. Like, I don't think any of their patches have been like a step backwards, as far as I'm concerned.
No.
Yeah, it's a good sign. They've been adding stuff on a regular clip and noticeably improving as they go.
Well, and they also survey, like, pretty regularly. Like, they'll do this thing where, like, they'll give you a few coins and then there's a link to a survey, and if you fill out the survey, they give you, like, a decent amount of Mora. And it seems like they're actually taking those survey results and doing stuff with them.
They do seem to be at least paying some attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also I enjoy that the game does have a story. I mean, it may or may not be going someplace original with it, but it's, it's there. It's fun.
Yeah, it's a fun journey so far.
Yeah, it's got some interesting characters, and especially the side quests, or the sort of non-main story character quests and things like that have been pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that all of the like leaders of the villain faction are all named after Commedia dell'arte characters.
Oh yeah.
So
I like. I just want to say too that I like that the stories for the characters that are playable characters are not necessarily locked on those characters like they are in a lot of gacha games.
Yeah.
So you get to see them regardless of whether you were lucky enough to get the pull.
Yeah.
I also like that you can try out a character, like, before you decide if you're going to roll on the banner to try and get one of those characters.
And they even give you a reward for trying out the character.
Yep. Absolutely worth doing. Okay, so before the show, earlier in the day, we came to a realization that the last time there was a game that all the folks on the podcast picked in their list, it was also a Supergiant Games game.
And I was shocked. Shock,
Yeah.
I tell you.
Look, Supergiant Games shows up and delivers games of the year. It's what
They've
they
done
do.
it again.
It's just what they do. It's what they do. Hades is amazing. Hades is great.
It's not even close for me. It's game of the year.
I do have to say I found it very amusing so Jim Sterling always does his games of the year, and he always says there is no number one game of the year. They're all just my 5 games of the year. And this year he was like, nope, this is the game of the year. This is the best. This is a really good game.
It's just so good in like by every metric, like gameplay, art, music, story, character design, everything. Systems.
And that's the thing that I find most interesting is like, so you're doing a roguelite and you're going to die a lot, but like to some extent, I almost look forward to the deaths because I realize there'll be little story beats every time I go back.
Yeah, after I die again, I can talk to Dusa again.
Remember
Exactly.
that?
Deuce is the best.
Remember, like a few months ago, we were talking about PvP, and the comment I had a comment that I was thinking about, and I think about it with Hades as well, where the key to PvP, and I think Hades does this without any PvP, is to make losing fun.
Yes.
Losing should be as fun as winning, and Hades pulls it off.
I think the other type of game that could really learn this lesson is a little closer to Hades, which is like very difficult Souls-like games.
Yes.
Where you need to make sure that even when you fail, you might have a moment, but then like the game just sort of grooves you back and gives you a little denouement, and then by the time you're in the room with Skelly, you're ready to go again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to actively make myself stop playing, or I'll just keep doing runs.
Just one more run.
Mm-hmm.
Just one more run. The actual variation in gameplay of those runs is also way higher than a lot of roguelites had.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Supergiant fashion, they give you a lot of options for customizing exactly what game style you want to play and how difficult you want it to be.
Yes.
Like they even give you godlike mode if you really just want to experience the story and not have to worry too much about combat.
Yeah. And one of the things is I played it straight for a while. I realized that I could play it straight for a while. And then when I got to the point where it's like, I want to see more story, I want to see other stuff it's doing, I set it to godlike mode so I could experiment, but still make progress and try new weapons. And it was great.
Yeah,
And
that too. It's something you can turn on and off.
Yeah.
Well, and
It
I
unlocks to it.
appreciate the way that they implemented it because, I also turned it on eventually, and it doesn't just immediately turn it into story mode. It just says, okay, when you hit a point where you hit a wall, you'll be a little more powerful next time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need a lot of that, you'll get a lot more powerful. But if you don't, you'll get what you need.
Exactly. It worked very smoothly, and you're still picking up those story beats in between when you die. So, and you're going to die, and that's fine. So it smooths the experience in a really beautiful way.
I got to the first credits, or maybe the only credits, I don't know.
It's the only credits, but not the only ending.
But there's a whole lot more story after that.
And I have realized I need to go back and play it more because there are several Orpheus songs I have yet to hear in game, or voiced songs.
They're so good.
Mm-hmm. Like I just heard a new one from him because I kept telling him lies about myself, and he wrote a song about one.
Yep.
It's not my fault. It's Dionysus' fault. It was his idea.
It was all Dionysus' idea.
Well, and I started playing the game in early access, and I played the game in early access to the point where when it went live and the entire backside of the mirror became available, like the yellow rather than the purple, I just bought all of it. Like the only thing that I didn't max out, that I couldn't immediately max out, was the bottom one, the
boon reroll.
The boon reroll.
Yeah, that was expensive.
Which was like crazy expensive. But like everything else maxed out immediately. And I still came back, and it was still fun to come back in, and see what had changed. And like, honestly, I think that their changes between early access and live were great. I think the game was fun in early access, but could be punishingly difficult. And I think that they came up with a better way to add that level of difficulty for people who wanted it, while still making the game playable and accessible.
Yeah, I bought the game the instant it was available in early access and played it on and off the whole time. But yeah, and there were definitely points where I had beaten the amount of game that existed at the time, and that was rough in early access. And so when I finally came back for launch, I started over from scratch because I knew that there was new art, there were story beats that were added, there were mechanical things that were added, and I just wanted to experience it clean. And it felt much more smooth. It was definitely less punishing at the sort of entry levels, and it was just fun. And I didn't at all feel like, oh, I've already played through this and I wish I could just skip it. No, like it was engaging playing it all the way through.
One of the things I find weird is like my favorite weapon differs on the platform I play. It's like on PC, I greatly prefer shield. On Switch, I greatly prefer sword.
I played this game with a controller even on PC, so...
Yeah, same. Sword is by far my least favorite. Although I do have the casting sword, and I like that better.
I do like the Poseidon sword.
Yeah.
Much more, though, I like the secret sword.
I like the secret sword. I like the secret weapons almost all except one I really like.
I don't like the spear.
I don't like the fists.
Oh, I love the fists. My best fists are not those, but I do like the secret fists.
Yeah, it's hard for me to use any fists other than magnetic pull.
Those are not my best fists either. Those are my worst fists.
That a lot. Those are absolutely my best. Those are both the first weapon I beat the final boss with, and the weapon I have the fastest clear with.
The secret gun.
That thing's, yeah.
It's completely bonkers. Also, the gun in general, which was a secret originally, is just my best weapon by a huge margin. I think I have twice as many clears with it as I do other weapons combined.
I think my fastest weapon is the gun that does bonus damage on reload, which is very quickly the one-shot gun.
Mm-hmm.
It's reasonable. I have the... I go very much for either bomb spam or lots of rapid fire, like infinite ammo or the other thing.
Lots of fireballs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate with the secret gun that I can just slowly cover the map with little pulsing AoEs.
There are so many boons that are just broken with those.
It's so nonsense, and I love it so much. I also just love all of the different builds that you can get. Like, there's so many interesting combinations of things you can do. Recently I was like, what if I do Aphrodite and Zeus? That's not a combination I've ever tried. Turns out it works. Turns out it works better than I imagined.
I realize it is a pretty well-known combo, but I love Athena and Ares, or Aphrodite and Ares.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I've done Ares and Dionysus builds where I touch people and then wait for them to die.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed those builds quite a bit.
Yeah, really fun. I mean, getting the secret gun with Dionysus is real silly, real quick.
Yes.
It's also charming. And I've had a wall of papercraft, like couples from media, and I'm so tempted to add Hades and Thanatos. because they're adorable and I love it.
Yeah.
I love everything about it.
They did just such a good job of like making nearly every character just really likable, and like, you know, apart from Theseus. Theseus is terrible.
Theseus is intentionally not likable.
But there's yeah.
They managed to take characters that I didn't like and later in the game make me be like, you know what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they did an amazing job of making Zagreus like believably sort of a slacker doofus, but lovably so. And
sorry, Zagreus and Thanatos. Getting that wrong.
And yeah. And just and slowly getting everybody to actually like be on decent terms with Zagreus. Because mostly like almost everybody in the House of Hades, like with the exception of Nyx and Achilles, either just doesn't actively dislikes you or at least doesn't respect you.
Dusa
or
Dusa
is
loves
just like
everyone.
or is just like just terrified of like talking to you.
Right.
Or is Hypnos and is just Hypnos.
Cerberus is on your side.
It's true.
Cerberus is always on your side.
He's the
I
best
love
dog.
Cerberus. He is the best dog. Also,
Cerberus destroyed a satyr sack.
Cerberus has the cleverest bit of like one-liner of dialogue to paper over animation limitations that I've ever seen.
What, the bit about only one head liking pets?
Yeah. You know I'm not going to pet any of the other heads. You don't like that. Adorable.
I appreciate that. Like originally, was it ever actually in that you fought Cerberus, or did they rethink that before they even put it in? Because originally they were going to have you fight Cerberus, but then they realized that people would have problems with that.
I don't think it was ever in.
No, I certainly never saw it if it was
I never
there.
saw it if it was in.
Yeah.
There are still bosses I know I haven't fought because I haven't fought the shopkeeper.
It's about how
roguelike tradition.
Yeah,
it's a tradition.
If you've ever fought a shopkeeper in a roguelike, you know where this is going to go.
It bad, yo.
Okay. So in addition to Hades getting all the votes, we had like 3 games that got a significant number of votes for honorable mention. First of which is Horizon Zero Dawn, and while it was one of our games of the year in 2017,
yeah,
it came out again this year on the PC, and it felt real good to play it on the PC. I greatly appreciated playing it with mouse and keyboard.
I didn't know how much of a difference it was going to make. I loved the game on PS4. I love it even more on the PC where I have mouse and keyboard controls, and no one has any excuse not to play this game at this point. It's amazing.
Bow combat just felt so much better with a mouse. It just felt more precise. Super good though. Like I enjoyed replaying it because enough time had passed that like I was able to really almost relive all of it again. And I had never played the DLC content, and the DLC is way better than it deserves to be.
Yeah, I really enjoyed playing the DLC because I hadn't gotten very far into it on the PlayStation version. So I was glad to be able to do that because, yes, it was also excellent.
Next one of the honorable mentions is Disco Elysium.
Yeah.
God, that game is good.
It's so good.
It's incredibly fun to play and like really engaging, and this is another one of those games where even failing can be fun.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure I said it before when we were talking about it, but this game feels to me like the true spiritual successor to Planescape Torment. Like this is a game that has you thinking about things and considering philosophical questions.
Sometimes as game mechanics.
Yeah.
Like it's so it's a point and click adventure game, and we've talked about it some, but it's so the idea of having yourself and like different things that you're thinking about and different like aspects of your psyche as voiced characters is brilliant. And like at first it's funny because it's like different parts of your brain all arguing with each other, you know, haha, you're a disaster human being. And it's like, okay, it's a fun conceit. It's really interesting and you get used to it. And then it uses that to deliver one of the most just heart-wrenching moments I've ever seen that would absolutely not be possible without that conceit. It's so good.
It is. Yeah, it is definitely a game that has. It's got so much interesting stuff, and it leaves me wanting to experience that world more.
Yeah, like I would very much like to learn more about that world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also a really interesting world, and it reveals the interestingness of the world at a really good pace, while also leaving you wondering, like, how crazy are you actually?
Mm-hmm.
Are you nuts? How nuts are you? Maybe.
It's like, are these things you're seeing that your partner doesn't see? Are they real and you're more in tune with things? Or is your brain just broken?
Yes. I feel like that's a yes.
Or is your partner yanking your chain?
Who knows?
You don't know. You've never met him before. Even if you had, you wouldn't remember.
So our last honorable mention is Guild Wars 2, because there's been a bit of a renaissance amongst the members of this podcast playing it, honestly, after the podcast a lot of times.
Yeah. I mean, basically, the things that were preventing...
problematic elements in ArenaNet are gone.
Yes. And so we felt like we could actually play it again. And there's been new story since we had played before. For those of us who had gotten, to or near the end of the existing story. And like, it's still just a really good game that manages to keep content interesting, like worth doing at least. And the new story is really, really good. Like,
I've described it before. FF14 has some great storytelling, and they're working on fixing the incredible uphill that it takes to actually access that really great storytelling, because it's not, much as I love it, it is not that first arc or two is pretty rough.
Yeah.
But the payoff is incredible. And Guild Wars 2 started out with a starkly worse story.
Yes.
That's an understatement.
It opens up with I mean, it's like unlikable characters and kind of uninteresting patchy story that is doing stuff that's not that interesting anyway, and you're not even the main character, and
there's some good stuff scattered in there, but you're not even guaranteed to see it because it's dependent on what.
Yeah, it's depending on like some choices you made in character.
What choices
creation.
you made. Yeah, what order you join.
Yeah, and so like it's just not that super exciting and compelling. And then Heart of Thorns happens, and Heart of Thorns is much better. It's not like amazing, but it's at least a coherent story with mostly characters I like.
Yeah. Yeah. And now you have a team, and they're actually a team that you want to be working with. Yeah.
And over the course, basically in the same way that FF14 gets better storytelling and better content every expansion, Guild Wars 2 has been doing the same, to the point where Guild Wars 2 has the second best storytelling in an MMO, with story beats and interesting characters and fascinating reveals and big epic encounters and characters who I definitely want to see where their story goes next, littered all throughout. And like, okay, no, it's not Shadowbringers, but it's just as good as anything before that.
Yeah,
which is a pretty high bar.
The latest stuff, the story in Icebreed Saga, has actually like surprised me at times.
Yeah,
like it has turned in different ways than I expected. in places.
They have incredibly great villains. They have incredibly great villains that remain relevant even after you've beaten them.
They have really good antagonists who may or may not actually be villains.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of Icebrood Saga has been trying to figure out, like, who's, like, what do we really need to be doing here? Like, so it shouldn't be any spoiler that Icebrood Saga, deals with going after Jormag, who is the great dragon of ice, who his dragon servants are the Icebrood. Or, sorry, their dragon servants are the Icebrood. And Jormag's thing is whispering to people and, like, offering them things. And, like, people say that Jormag lies, but so far I don't know if anything that Jormag said to us has actually been a lie.
Like, it's entirely possible. Like, it's known that Jormag is a manipulator, but it's also entirely possible that at this point you've beaten down a bunch of other dragons. Jormag may just be trying to save their own skin.
Yeah. Like, they're still absolutely a manipulator, but I don't know if they're using lies to manipulate in this situation. And it
goes places.
It does. And we're also seeing, so leading into Path of Fire, we ran into the situation, which is one of the few issues I did have with the story. They decided to have Bram basically pick up the idiot ball and run with it, and made him rather unlikable in the process. And they've since, fixed that to a degree. Like, Bram apologized, and we've got a better understanding of what's going on, and we're cool together. But now with Jormag in the mix, we're starting to see, like, similar sorts of disagreements between our friends and allies, and it's really hard to make the case that any of them is wrong. Like, all of their positions are perfectly reasonable and perfectly valid, but also, like, it's starting to cause cracks, and I'm starting to be a little concerned, but it's also really compelling. I will say, if anything happens to Jory and Kaz, there will be fire.
I mean, I know what class you're playing. Isn't there going to be fire regardless?
Well, yes, but the bad kind of fire.
And amid all of the good storytelling, there's fun, bite-sized group content. Like, fractals are fun. They scale well. There's just tons of little. It's like a collector's dream. There's all kinds of little things that you can go chase after and do and get into. Do you want to collect? The
inverse of that is it's a completionist nightmare.
I mean, it's a completionist nightmare. But as far as, like, finding a project and going after it and doing it and generally getting something really cool at the end of it, it's really good about that. And also, you don't have to care.
Yes.
Like, part of the reason that I keep on coming back to it is every time I come back to it, I have max level characters with max level gear. And so I come back to characters that were, relative to the rest of the game, just as powerful as they were when I left.
Yep.
And boy, does that feel good. And there's still, and even though that's true, there's still stuff to come back and work for. And even when somebody new jumps in to start, it's not an insurmountable, it's not this insurmountable onboard.
Yeah. It's not the Final Fantasy XIV problem of, well, before you can actually do current content with us, you have to play through 5 billion hours of story.
Yeah. You have to play through 5 billion hours of story, and also, until you've done that, you won't actually be able to do anything with us. Like, you can not only just jump in and be able to do stuff with other people more or less immediately, you also can then go back and do that story, and it's still interesting and relevant because the game scales to you. And
I will say that used to bug me a lot more than it currently does.
It's true.
Like, it does bug me that a little bit that there is, I mean, okay, we've had this level discussion a whole bunch of times in the past, but it does not feel like you are getting stronger all the time, because as you are leveling up, you are getting clamped down to the level of the zone you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, at this point, all of the zones are either max level or I don't care. It's not like I'm leveling up anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. The actual numeric number of your character's level is not really the important thing, because there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you're leveling up that is relevant and interesting. Because masteries are still a thing, and you still get them by leveling up and spending the equivalent of talent points that you get through a variety of activities. And then you're inspired to go out and get more talent points to spend them on more masteries to get more stuff, which takes you back to play more of the game in a nice loop.
Mm-hmm.
But that feels more natural, and it mostly doesn't feel like you must be this tall to ride hard block the way levels often can. Sometimes it can.
Gonna say there's a few times where it is, but
there's a few times where it is, but you're mostly not going to see it unless you're trying to skip content.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not entirely sure that's true. In the early Heart of Thorns, you are going to hit mastery blocks probably. Early Path of Fire, you're probably going to hit mastery locks.
Yeah,
that's fair. I thought Path of Fire was a lot less bad about it than Heart of Thorns, but yeah, I agree.
It is, but you still need a skimmer, and you still need to do a variety of things to get one.
Yeah.
Okay, any other final thoughts about this year of games? The only thing that I would key in is I'm kind of sad that this is the second year a WoW expansion has been released that I didn't want to put it on the list.
Yeah, it's kind of sounding like they broke the pattern of only every other WoW expansion being good by having 2 in a row be bad.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
My only other statement for the year is thank goodness for video games, full stop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have never needed the escapism that video games provided more than this year.
It's so true.
The escapism and the connection to other people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Simultaneously, something that I desperately needed in the year 2020.
The other thing for me, I'm also just so glad that this was a good year for games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
There were more games that I wanted to play than I could reasonably play.
Yep.
It's taking me till January to get around to playing the new Hyrule Warriors, for example.
I think that's a show. We managed to squeeze it into a long show, not like an epically long show, but a long show.
But it's not a double show.
Yeah.
Not a double show. Anyway,
Anyways,
hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week for a normal show. Good night.
good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See ya.